Hello, the internet. My name is Wes, and welcome to a kind of gauche discussion about money and guitars. I've just bought the most expensive single object I've ever owned, and I don't even have a car, so this was probably kind of irresponsible. Just to be clear, I kind of suck at guitar, and I acknowledge that, but I know I'm going to play guitar, albeit poorly, every day for the rest of my life, and I want to do it on a really nice instrument. So this rabbit hole of research and finding my forever guitar has culminated in this video, my litany of everything that's wrong and right about the Fender American Ultra Jazzmaster and how to fix it, how much it all costs, and whether or not it was worth it in the end. The TLDR is, it's a great instrument now that I dumped another grand worth of mods into it. It has some serious shortcomings out of the box, and the QA issues I encountered made me seriously question my affinity for Fender as a brand, and to kind of question the value of expensive guitars in general. So right off the top, there are going to be a lot of frank discussions about money in this video, and I'm aware that that can come off pretty douchey. My intent here isn't to flaunt cash, and I know that the costs involved in this project are out of reach or just unjustifiable for a lot of guitar players who are way more talented than me. My only intent here is to be really frank about the cost-benefit analysis of a pretty significant expenditure. I want other people who are considering investing in a forever guitar to learn from my experiences. So after much soul-searching, I knew for sure that I wanted a Jazzmaster. Opinions will definitely differ, but it seems like the gold standard for a top-notch Jazzmaster, at least based on my research, is either an original vintage specimen from the 60s, nope, or an American vintage reissue 62 or 65, which were released in the early 2010s, also known as an AVRI. If it's good enough for Deep Sea Diver, it's good enough for me. These are not to be confused with the AVRI version 2, which is mad expensive and apparently a huge step down in build quality. After playing them both, I agree with this consensus. A used AVRI 1 costs about $2.2K at rock bottom minimum, up to about $3K and beyond for a more typical example, and that's a used cross-country shipped Gamble off Reverb. Even the $3,000 example at my local guitar shop had a massive ding in it. But behind door number 2 is the Jazzmaster Ultra. They can be had brand new for $2K at the time of recording. They also come in a much nicer custom molded case, which is not to be scoffed at in terms of value, but the real difference between the two is the Ultra's fancy compound radius neck and the super sleek body contours and the really nice upper fret access. So the real question is, can I trick this thing out to sound as good as an AVRI 1 for $3K or less with the benefit of the Ultra's improved ergonomics? Well, I've bet $3,000 worth of money that I shouldn't be spending that the answer is yes. So let's get into everything that's wrong with the Jazzmaster Ultra, both in general and the specific example that I received. I don't have a car, so I just had to have it shipped to me and deal with the example that I get. Number 1, the fretboard was dry as a bone from the factory. I'm going to say it's forgivable. I needed to oil up my other instruments, so okay, ring me up for a $6 bottle of lemon oil. Number 2, one of the rollers on the out-of-phase circuit was completely stuck in place. I don't know how that got through QA. It's disappointing on a top-dollar guitar, but I'll say forgivable, I guess. Ring me up for a hex wrench set. That's $14. Number 3, the unshielded body cavity. Every guitar in existence can benefit from a shielded body cavity, noiseless pickups or not. Generally, you want the inside part of the guitar to be lined with something conductive and connected to ground so that it forms a little Faraday cage around the electronics and reduces the amount of noise that the guitar is picking up. I feel like there's no excuse for this thing to be unshielded from the factory, and don't tell me that noiseless pickups solve this. We'll get into those in a second. In any case, ring me up for a roll of conductive copper tape. That's $9. Number 4, the bridge. This has got to be the biggest goof on the whole guitar. The Ultra has a compound curved neck. It's a 10-inch radius at the nut and a 14-inch radius on the body. That means the fretboard gets flatter as you move towards the body, so the bridge needs to be even flatter still so that the strings follow the changing curve of the neck. The bridge should be about a 16-inch radius. What does it ship with? A 9.5-inch radius Jaguar bridge, which is rounder than at the nut. That's freaking insane. Thank you very much to Mike Adams of the channel Pusheen for calling this out so loudly, because I might have just thought that the feel was off and never figured out why. My verdict is this is inexcusable. Ring me up for a mastery bridge, which is $215. I say any guitar review channel who bills themselves as an expert and doesn't mention this issue, either they didn't notice, so fair enough, or they're doing what you might call a product demo more so than a review per se. Pretty good litmus test in my opinion. Number 5, the vibrato system. It works fine, but there's an annoying dead spot where the arm is just flopping around in the threads, and it makes the vibrato way less responsive and musical than it should be. Tuning stability isn't terrible. The thing is, the screw-in arm has a bunch of weird resonances and squeaks, and it's super floppy. And I think they made it screw in because a lot of people want to be able to easily remove the arm when putting the guitar in a case. But by all accounts, leaving the arm in when you case an instrument isn't a problem. All it does is reduce the string tension, which seems to me that it might actually reduce the stress on the neck and increase its longevity. I could try to stop all the squeaks on the vibrato arm with some lubrication, which would then just make it even floppier. And then I could try to make some custom 3D printed TPU grommet thing to stop it from flopping around. But again, $2,000 instrument. These issues are hard to excuse, and they seem like a big step down from the AVRI vibrato. So ring me up for a Mastery vibrato system. That's $230 minus a $15 discount for purchasing it together with the bridge. Alright, number 6, the noiseless pickups. Obviously, pickups are a matter of taste, and these things are pretty quiet, though definitely not completely and utterly noiseless around EMI sources. Fair enough. I do think the pickups are usable, but they're kind of bloodless when played clean. A lot of people hate them, and I'm not really much of a fan either. You can rescue the tone with some clean boost into a transparent overdrive, but again, top dollar instrument, I wish I didn't have to rescue the tone with a bunch of pedals. I guess forgivable, but still, if I'm trying to match the AVRI for quality and tone, you're going to have to ring me up for some new pickups. I went for a set of the Novak JMV and JM Fat pickups. That's $294 shipped. Number 7, the pickguard. It's a fine color and material and all that, but the insulation foil just kind of flakes out around the roller knob cutouts and protrudes into the way of them. It really needs a pass with an X-Acto knife, so I got one more thing on my list when I pull the pickguard off to install the other mods. The volume and tone knobs were kind of loose too, so I had to lock those down when my guitar came in. Those roller knob cutouts also aren't super smooth. They kind of have out of whack bits that look like they want a good filing down. My verdict is fixable, but again disappointing for the alleged flagship of the product line. Number 8, we got some tool marks on the neck and the nut and extra bits of glue. There's no fix for this, just gotta live with it. Number 9, the setup was decent but a bit buzzy on the low E. I'm gonna say forgivable since it was shipped through snowy weather, and I'm gonna redo the setup when I install these mods anyway. Number 10, last but not least, is the electronics. This goes right in between the good and bad sections because it could really go either way depending on your preferred level of Jazzmaster purity. Most of the components seem to be high quality, and I like the no-load tone pots. The Ultra does away with the usual rhythm circuit that most Jazzmasters have, and in its place is an out-of-phase circuit that I believe is more typically found on the Jaguar. You can fact-check me in the comments if I'm wrong. I like the inclusion of the out-of-phase circuit, but I don't really like the implementation. The rhythm circuit rollers are now used to control the individual volume of each pickup when in out-of-phase mode. As others have observed, both rollers are generally going to stay dimed out at all times, which means there's a ton of extra complicated wiring with no practical purpose. I don't want my signal taking a long cable run needlessly, especially in an unshielded cavity. Also, the wiring is just kind of a spaghetti monster mess. I really think on a top-notch instrument this should be so much cleaner. Next up is the volume pot, which has an extra switch hidden in it. This reroutes the pickups from parallel to series wiring, which makes for a volume bump and a darker EQ curve. This overrides the pickup selector toggle since both pickups are needed for this mode to do anything. It can also be stacked with the phase switch. This functionality is pretty cool in my opinion, but I find it hard to activate the switch without jogging the volume level, and I have some serious misgivings about the long-term durability of the Fender S1 switch. Fancy switch aside, the pot values are miles off from what you would typically find in a Jazzmaster, which definitely has me a little concerned. The tone and volume pots in the Ultra are all 250K as opposed to 1 meg in a typical Jazzmaster such as the AVRI 65. I don't have enough experience to say how big of a difference this will make, but most Jazzmaster pickups are designed for higher value pots like 1 meg or 500K. I can't speak with authority, but my intuition here is that these values will be more important to players with their vintage correct chastity belts cinched up a little tighter than mine. So in the end, here is everything I did to take the instrument from its stock configuration to where it is now. Number 1, I got a hex key and unstuck the bound up roller. Number 2, I oiled up the fretboard. Number 3, I cleaned out all the stray buffing wax that's accumulated in the body cavity from the factory. Thanks. And shielded the body cavity in the pickguard with copper tape. Number 3, I removed the electronics and got a tracing of the pickguard shape in case I want to modify or replace it with a custom guard. It's non-standard, so the usual Jazzmaster template won't work. Number 4, I touched up the roller cutouts with a file and an X-Acto knife. Number 5, I installed new pickups. Number 6, installed the Mastery bridge. Number 7, last but not least, I installed the Mastery vibrato. I did the labor myself and invested in some tools from StewMac to get the job done, which added to the cost of this project a pretty significant amount. None of the installation was crazy hard, and I feel like I did learn a lot by doing the work myself, and it definitely saves money over going to a guitar tech to have all that stuff done. Unfortunately, I did not get footage of installing the mods because it was enough pressure just doing the mods, much less filming it all. Obviously, these upgrades were not cheap, and so much of this fit and finish stuff should absolutely have been solved at the factory, because not everyone is as comfortable as I am in taking a screwdriver and a soldering iron to their brand new baby. Here's how it sounds now. Insert demo here. My signal path here is just the guitar going directly into a Strymon Iridium with the chime setting. Everything's at about noon except for the drive, which is a bit less than that. And I gotta say, I think it's a huge improvement. The intonation and action is better, and I think the sustain might be slightly improved, but I haven't done any empirical testing to confirm that. So here's basically what it sounds like in all the various different positions. I have to say I am duly impressed with the Mastery vibrato system. It's physically very quiet, super responsive, there's no dead spot at any point in there, and I've found the tuning stability to be really impressive with a little bit of lube in the nut slot and at the bridge. I can dive bomb really aggressively without messing the tuning up, and honestly I used to clown on people who were always going crazy on these vibrato arms, but now that I've got one I absolutely can't stop. So I can really go nuts on this thing and it stays pretty stable. But it still stays in tune pretty well. It's not bad. Alright, let's move on to the things that are actually right about this guitar, which made me think it was worth spending all this money on it and then upgrading it to hell and back. So number one, the neck. Holy moly, does this thing play well. I got the chance to try it in a shop alongside the AVRIs that we talked about earlier, and I think it played even better than the AVRI one, even being hamstrung by the janky bridge. I had never played a compound curved neck before, but it felt really right and playable in my tiny little goblin hands. I love a good rosewood fretboard, and my example had no noticeable fret sprouting, which is big, and my hand can slide up and down super comfortably. Also, the finish. Like, holy hell. My tiny, scratchy little raccoon mitts have some kind of weird caustic chemistry that makes my palms really stick to varnished surfaces. But even my grubby little grabbers just kind of smoothly glide on that ultra satin finish. Honestly, it's kind of ruining me on other guitar necks. I'm no expert on fretwork, but I do kind of suspect that the crowning on these isn't dead-on perfect. I might revisit that at a later date when I'm more confident in working on guitars. The other thing I really like is the body itself. I just don't understand why they don't make every guitar body like this now that CNC machines are a thing. It's got super deep cutaways that make upper fret access really great, and it's got really sexy body contours that make it super comfortable for me to hold and play in both the sit and stand positions. There's also an angled neck pocket, which should hopefully make it easier to set up without shims, although in the end, if it's too drastic, I might actually have to shim it the other way. We'll see. Also, I do think the Ultra Burst finish looks sick as hell. The neck, body, and case are the things I didn't feel like I can realistically modify, so for me they needed to be pretty much perfect out of the gate, and I do feel like the Jazzmaster Ultra accomplishes that. It kind of steps on a rake, though, when it comes to, you know, little things like the pickups, the bridge, the tailpiece, the electronics, the details in the pickguard, the shielding, etc. I almost wonder if they intentionally cut corners on some of that stuff because they know that the Jazzmaster is like a tinkerer's guitar and loads of people are going to replace that stuff anyway. If you want to do that, it's fine, just don't advertise it as being the absolute peak of luxury and bring the price down a little. My verdict is, the stock Jazzmaster Ultra is not worth $2K. If $2K or less is your absolute limit and you're willing to tinker, get a cheap guitar with good bones and then source your hardware and pickups from there. The Jazzmaster Ultra, with another grand worth of upgrades and many hours of labor, maybe might be worth $3K, so it lives in kind of a weird place. I'd stack it up against any $3,000 AVRI 1 example that I've played, and I think the two would be comparable. In the end, I'd rather have what I've got than an AVRI one due to the ergonomics. To be honest, I haven't fully nailed the setup yet, and my hope is to find some way to lower the action a bit without introducing buzz. But since this is my first foray into guitar setup, I think with time and experimentation, it'll eventually get there. I will say, when the strings are fresh, the intonation on this thing is pretty freaking impressive. At the end of this journey, I'm pretty satisfied with the result, but for one thing, I didn't realize just how noisy true Jazzmaster single coils are. It's gnarly and super distracting. Even though they sound freaking awesome, I don't know if I can live with the noise. After a lot of head scratching, I've decided to shoot out the Novaks that I bought with some noiseless Kinman pickups, and to make those pickups sound their best, I'm doing a full revamp on the electronics with new pot values, as well as making my own custom anodized aluminum pickguard to house them. I'm even going to be restoring the missing rhythm circuit while keeping the phase and parallel mods. If you'd like to see how you can take a tracing of your pickguard and turn it into an anodized aluminum pickguard from Sendcut Send for like half the price of your average custom pickguard site, please subscribe to the channel so you can catch stage 2 of the Tricking Out My Dream Guitar project. It occurs to me that if I can get this channel monetized in 2024, but technically I could write all this stuff off on my taxes, so finger guns? Anyway, I've been Wesley, thank you for watching, and see you next time.